And now we're joined by President Brendan Kelly, president of the University of West Georgia. Thank you so much for coming in.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So you're a huge NBA fan. Who's your favorite team?
That's a complicated question. So I'll answer it this way. One, my home is 37 miles from State Farm Arena. That is, as the crow flies, that is part of the reason why I purchased the home. I love the Atlanta Hawks. I love what the Hawks are doing right now, and they have, in my experience, the best game day experience of any NBA team. But as somebody who grew up in Flint, Michigan, which is a huge producer of NBA players, including Kyle Kuzma, who sits on in the NBA right now, and having played in the Detroit area for a long time and gotten to play against a lot of guys who ended up going to the NBA, it is hard not to be a diehard Pistons fan, especially when you get to grow up in the Bad Boys era.
That's what I was going to ask you about, is being from Flint, Michigan, growing up in that bad boy Pistons era. What was that like? Because I feel like Detroit basketball has never been in its prime quite like those Isaiah Thomas days.
Well, 2003, 2004 with Chauncey Billups and Tayshaun Prince.
That's an underrated team.
I mean, those were fantastic teams, 2 championships in a row. No, it wasn't. There wasn't anything like that. And I will tell you what it did. It took a place like Flint, Michigan, that gets such a bad rap, and Detroit at the time got such a bad rap, and it made you proud of the grit. Everybody complained about the Bad Boys era because they were so tough and it was so physical, and we went, right. And when a few years ago when the Super Bowl commercial came out from Chrysler and it was imported from Detroit, all of us who were sitting all over the country from that era went, finally, somebody understands it, and they said it the right way. There is just simply a grit and a toughness and an unapologetic attitude, an unapologetic pridefulness that comes along with being from that area, and the Bad Boys captured that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. So as an NBA fan, who do you think is going to win the championship this year?
That's such a tough
I
question.
know.
Not the Lakers, but the rough start.
Very rough.
And I don't care how good you get over the course of the year. That one's going to be tough. The Bucks look fantastic.
Definitely.
I mean, if you've watched Giannis play just at the beginning of the season, it's absolutely extraordinary. But I'm gonna tell you, I would not put a good playoff run past the Hawks. They keep putting pieces in place.
Exactly.
I'm not going to shy away from any team that Jimmy Butler leads. And Dallas is on its way.
Okay.
Dallas is on it's. They're not quite there yet, but they're on their way. So I expect great things from all of those. And then the Clippers are fully loaded. So.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting, Dr. Kelly, because you said 2 things right there. One, you mentioned Hawks and Heat, and we are Hawks and Heat fans in this room.
Yeah.
It is a very Southeastern divisional rivalry going on in this room at all times. So it is very interesting that you decided to point out those 2 teams specifically. And then when you throw in Dallas with Luka, you have the Luka-Trae situation there.
Yeah.
That's also very interesting. And I agree with you. I do think Dallas is on their way. They may need one more piece to run with Luka, but Luka looks incredible right now. He looks like the best player behind Giannis right now. And Trae is on the way. Eastern Conference Trae showed up a few nights ago.
Trae is on the way. I love Trae is on the way. It's such a great term. And you're right. There is something else missing from the Larry Bird-esque player that Luka is, but it's coming.
Oh, it's coming.
It's coming.
Those 2 players are going to be a problem.
I'm a diehard Heat fan. I just love that you throw in the soundbite about Jimmy Butler, because a lot of people forget about us in the regular season, but you don't want to see the Miami Heat in the playoffs.
I'm going to tell you. So we were in we lived in Michigan 03, 04, then moved to Florida in 04, and so did LeBron James.
Oh, wow.
Which was fantastic, and we had such a great run and just such a fantastic experience. And then we moved to South Carolina, where there is no pro team in anything. And when we would come to the Hawks games because it was the closest NBA team. I mean, Charlotte was closer, but
Right. Who wants to go to Charlotte?
But you made the right decision.
You went to the right city.
With all due
Exactly.
respect. But when you came to Hawks games, it was fantastic. But they weren't quite in the place that they are now, and really on their way to being a premier team. And then, of course, we moved to Georgia, and we start with great playoff runs.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you, any state that the Kellys live in seems to have a better NBA future.
All right, Tony Wrestler, you heard it here first. It's coming.
I think you're the good luck charm. Your family's good luck charm. So, did you grow up playing any sports?
I grew up playing a lot of basketball. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. I grew up, when you grow up in Flint, literally at any park, you're going to have the best basketball that's available. It's not unlike playing at a park in New York or whatnot. And we played with future NBA players.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a chance to play with Glenn Rice at the Y.
Oh,
Wow.
And Friday night at the YMCA in downtown Flint was amazing. I mean, there'd be 70 or 100 guys playing on two courts, and the games were amazing. But it was a lot of park basketball. It was a lot of YMCA basketball before organized and AAU and the like. And it's still fantastic.
So, as a basketball player, what position were you? And is there a certain player that you modeled your game after that you would compare your game to?
Yeah. All right. So growing up when I did, you modeled your game after Michael Jordan. You didn't necessarily have that skill set. So I will. The only way for me to encapsulate that is for me not to assess it, but have the audience assess it. Because I would always say, people say, "Hey, you're doing a good job." I said, "Well, you tell me, right? Because I'm in service to you." My teammates, when I was a lad, called me Billy, and that was after Bill Laimbeer. And that wasn't because of the style of our games. It was because of physicality.
Yeah, I figured you were a court bully.
Well, I would never refer to it as a bullying situation because many people were much larger than me. John Runyon, who ended up, I think he's a vice president of the NFL now, and he was 3 times the size that I am.
Yeah, the offensive lineman, right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
I played against him in high school too, and I wasn't going to be able to physically bully any part of him. But that doesn't mean that we can't carry a certain mindset and attitude that communicates that, playing defense is something that you should do from afar.
Absolutely. Now, men's and women's basketball is right around the corner here at the University of West Georgia. How excited are you to see both of these programs get started?
Oh, I'm thrilled. And I'll tell you, I'm thrilled. One, I love the fact that we put a lot of effort and energy last year into elevating the game day experience, into programming the game day experience so that we had more people involved and started kind of building other components to it. That's an important part of what a university does. 2, couldn't be more excited about our coaches because the coaches are the ones who I end up getting a chance to connect with the most. And when they get excited about a season, I get excited about the season, especially on the women's side. We have a brand new coach. She is a absolute superstar. And myself and Jason Carmichael, our athletic director, we hire coaches based on one thing, and that's we want to hire people who we want to play for and join as somebody who I would play for any day of the week.
Now, earlier this football season, we beat our #1 rival, Valdosta State, the first time in 5 years the Peach Basket has been in Carrollton. Talk about what that meant to the city, to the community, to the University of West Georgia.
That was a special day. That was a special day for a couple of reasons. One, anytime we play Valdosta, it's kind of its own homecoming, right? There's just a special energy around it. The teams feel that in any sport. We certainly felt it that day. Chancellor of the university system, Chancellor Purdue came. We had 3 members of the Board of Regents who came to that game. We were celebrating an awful lot of things that weekend as well with the Hall of Fame weekend for athletics. We had the 1982 National Championship team back. And I'll tell you, that rivalry is so rich and so ingrained in the cultures of our institutions that being able to, 1, win that game that day, but 2, celebrate it in such a grand fashion was exceptional. It was great for the University of West Georgia, and one of the best moments was watching that 1982 team connect with our current team as though there was just this unspoken brotherhood that existed. And I went, see, that's the the core of athletics. It's the core of collegiate athletics. It's that connectedness to generations. That was a special day, especially since President Carvajal had such a long ride back to Valdosta after we were all done.
I love the video that you made before the game. I just love the energy there. And you know what? We got it done. The Peach Basket is here in Carrollton.
That's right. Imported from Detroit. That's what I call it.
Nice. And we were on the sideline for that games, and to see the 1982 team and our team, it was just like such a beautiful moment in my opinion. I really loved it. But you began your tenure as president of this university in March of 2020, right as the pandemic hit. So how tough was that to navigate, and what went into us getting back on track in such an impressive fashion these last few years?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's the worst time to start a presidency at an American university in history. I mean, the only thing I can compare it to is maybe the opening days of World War II created as many challenges economically, organizationally, and the like. I will tell you, when you start off in crisis, which is exactly what we did, and you have to persist through crisis, and we have to reorganize around a new set of principles. The grounding force for me was the same thing that we started off this administration with, and that's, we're going to do what's right for the student, and then we're going to make it work for the university. I'll be honest, that is not the way universities were built in America. They were built on, we're going to make this work for us, and then you are going to accept it. And that's just not the world that we live in anymore. Maybe the pandemic, for all of the terrible things that it brought to the world, was an eye-opening experience for organizations like ours, when we had to refocus on what was most important. And what was most important for us is getting it right for every single student we're in service to, and getting better every single day. That mindset and that attitude isn't different than a championship team, is it? And a championship team, and I'll take you back if you want to have some fun. Let's go. The Bulls in the mid-'80s just drafted Michael Jordan. You've got this fantastic talent, but you don't have all of the pieces and parts, and it's going to be years before you have all the pieces and parts. The thing that came to that organization was a collective mindset, and not everybody accepted that collective mindset at first. But once that became the focus, we are going to be the best organization that Chicago's ever had. We're going to try to inject positive energy at every single turn into every single person we encounter. And in fact, their identity is going to be rooted in how prideful they are about that organization. I believe that that's a similar energy to what we're trying to run at the University of West Georgia, right? Let's be unapologetically prideful. And it's exactly where that video comes from, right?
Yeah.
Because win or lose, the energy and effort and positive thinking that we put into this place collectively is what's going to produce positive outcomes for us as an institution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So what was it about the University of West Georgia that made you want to be president here, made you assume the position?
That's a great question, because it's not my first presidency.
Oh,
It's a great question. So I was a sitting president in South Carolina. The things that attracted me are I'll give you kind of the top three. One, proximity to State Farm Arena is part of it. But really, that's proximity to Atlanta. We're in the business of providing experiences to students that fill their toolbox. And when you fill that toolbox, you want to introduce them to world-class opportunities. Well, we have 1,700 international companies, every major nonprofit organization, multiple professional sports organizations, many professional theater, radio, television. We do $4 billion in Georgia in film and television production every year. Georgia and Atlanta in particular are the center of the universe. So if you're in the business of producing skill sets and filling toolboxes for students and then connecting them to what comes next, there is no better place in America, in my view, to do that in an emerging way than in the Atlanta metropolitan area. Two, I believe very strongly that a university experience is a whole set of things. It's not just where you go, it's what that experience is comprised of. And the University of West Georgia is the second largest campus in the state. We have 2.5 million square feet. We have an ability to still become and evolve. And we're in a town that is 100% ripe and open to being a fantastic university town. And I'll fill that in a moment. The third is this. I studied the University of West Georgia. I studied what it had become from 1906 to the present. I forecast in my own view what that substance, that evolution could produce into the future. And when I looked at it, I went, if I was going to go and pick a university, would that be the university that I wanted to pick given the full breadth of experience? Not in 2019 when I was appointed, but in 2030. Would we be able to be the university that the world needed in 2030 when the next version of all of you is sitting there in 2028? Are they thrilled to be here because of what they have the opportunity to become? And you have to have an institution that has certain components in place and the ability to produce new components and a new future for itself, for that to be, for that future to come true. And I believe very strongly, I believe it much more now than I did, but I made a lot of assumptions saying, yeah, all of those component parts are in place for the University of West Georgia. And on the university town piece, when I got here, I'd been appointed president. I met with the mayor and I said, we need to do something about Maple Street. And she said, what do you mean? I said, it's terrible. I said, that is the corridor between a great downtown and our university. And that needs to be a premier corridor in Carrollton. It needs to be a premier entertainment and retail space, and it needs to have a lot of amenities that people under the age of 35 are running toward, and that's what will make us one of the best university towns in the state of Georgia in the Southeast. And she and the rest of the city council said, let's go. And we have put, you will start to see changes in that corridor. When you have a community that's open to evolution like that, then you've got a great partner for a public university.
Absolutely. Now, the University of West Georgia has an incredible amount of momentum right now, both academically and athletically. What is it about this university that makes it such a special place and such a perfect place for this momentum to take place and this growth to take place?
I think there is a willingness to be more prideful in what we have the opportunity to be than what we've been. And that doesn't exist at every university. There are many people who want to celebrate what they have accomplished instead of what they are capable of. And the belief in what we're capable of here permeates everybody I talk to, right? Students come here to become. And they've got an idea of what that is. They don't come in and wait for us to tell them. They come in and wait for us to help them. You've got an awful lot of faculty and staff who come to the University of West Georgia because they want to be intimately involved in that process. You know, I know I've worked at some other universities where you'll meet a faculty member who really is there just to teach doctoral students, and they don't really work directly with students. That's not why they're there. They're there to do research and run labs, and that's fantastic. That's the mission of that institution. But at West Georgia, it's different. See, when you come here, you expect people to pour into you. And we expect to have employees whose mission, whose job, whose passion is to pour into you too. And that's when what we have to offer and what you expect meet in this magical nexus. And UWG is just, I said it to the alumni board a week ago. There is just this weird, crazy sense of pride that exists here. And my job is just to make it so that becomes unapologetic pride, because it already exists, and it doesn't exist that way at other universities. And I think people who are at UWG assumes that it does. It doesn't. We have something, there's a very special spirit about this place, and we just have to make sure that we continue to enliven it and feed that fire into a new century.
We have a debate a lot of times on Sports Pack about NBA Mount Rushmores, the greatest players of all time. So, President Kelly, we have to ask you, who is on your NBA Mount Rushmore?
I hate this question. I love this question, but I hate this question, and nobody ever asks me, so I appreciate the question. Number one, and I do not care about the other arguments, Michael Jordan. And as he said, he can give you 6 reasons why. And they're all on his fingers. But he invented the way in which we play now. 2, and again, LeBron James. I'm sorry, but 3 teams, multiple championships. You spend most of your career in the finals in succession. That's incredible. So that's when it gets dicey. And I know there's going to be lots of different arguments. I'm going number 3 with Larry Bird. Goes back to the Luka piece. He is fantastic. He doesn't exist without Larry Bird first coming up. And I remember when I was a kid watching Larry Bird shooting video on a VHS tape, and he was trying to show people how to shoot it the wrong way. And he's at like half court. And so he uses terrible form, and he still makes it. And he goes, well, you know me. I'm like, come on. Number 4. Number 4 is tough. Number 4, I'm going to debate myself after I say a name, but I'm going with Kareem. Kareem had such a long, impactful career. And if I recall, he's in college 4 years. He wins 3 national championships. And that is more national championships, I believe, than Larry and Magic while they were in college combined. Kareem was just an absolute game changer. And has just become an example of what a post-NBA impact on society can be as well. Really something special. I will say he's not the only poet to come out of the NBA. If you go back, and James Worthy, also from the Lakers, published several books of poetry in his post-NBA career.
I love it. Now, who would you have just outside the 5th player? Because we do top 5s as well. So I'm going to give you that extra player, that extra 5th player that didn't quite make the cut.
An extra 5th player. Whew. Can I just pick an extra 5th player just out of love?
Yes.
Dwayne Wade.
Oh,
That's a great
I love
I
this
really
man.
like that.
That's
no,
an excellent
I really
pick.
like that.
I'm sorry, but that's
He was
Dwayne
phenomenal.
Wade made other people better in ways that you didn't even notice that he was making you better. And then would close out games with a smile. I mean, he kind of represented what goodness in sport was.
And his 06 finals run is the most underrated finals performance of all time.
Couldn't agree with you more. And the only reason it's underrated is because the Pistons 03-04 runs were so good, they were still shining bright.
I can't even argue against that, Dr. Kelly. I can't even argue against that.
That's all the time we have today with President Brendan Kelly. It's been an absolute honor and privilege. Thank you so much for coming by.
Hey, you are all fantastic, and it's a great conversation, but getting to watch you all work all the time represents some of the best the university has to offer.
Thank you
Dr.
so
Kelly.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.